Hi, folks. It's Global Politics with Jim Martin. Demographics has come up in the news a lot lately, and it seems like the media doesn't really seem to describe what you're talking about outside of birth rates. Demographics is the study of populations and population trends. It offers a fascinating and sometimes frightening glimpse into the potential futures of regions, countries, and peoples. It's also typically ignored by a lot of folks, including politicians, because of the time horizons that it encompasses. Here's a brief primer on how demographics can work to ensure a prosperous future or can represent a spiral leading into collapse, civil war, or worse. To begin with, you need accurate data on populations, total populations, birth rates, death rates, so forth. For decades, most countries strove to collect these data and publish them. And perhaps surprisingly, the old Soviet Union was extremely good at it. They used to put out a yearbook every year with detailed population data throughout all of the regions of the Soviet Union. In recent decades, the United States and the European Union set a new gold standard for these sort of data collection efforts. However, the recent actions of the Trump administration and purges of various experts that collect, calculate, and disseminate statistics in the United States has left the EU as the top source for trustworthy and accurate data on its member countries, and a little bit outside of that too. World Bank also does a good job of that, to a point. Despite its history, Russia has largely stopped collecting and publishing data on its population, and China, after a revealing and embarrassing misstep in 2018 and 19, has stopped collecting population data altogether. This forces inferential approaches to estimate their populations. The big dynamic to consider with demographics: younger people, require people to spend money on them. They also, as they grow up, tend to spend money. When folks enter the workforce, they typically spend even more, buying houses, cars, all sorts of things, appliances. As children grow up and become adults and age into middle age, they start buying luxury goods. All along that curve, they contribute to the economy and pay taxes. However, as folks hit their retirement years, they spend less, and then as they retire, they earn less and pay less taxes. Furthermore, in many advanced economies, they begin to receive government pensions, healthcare payments, things of this nature, and thus they can become a net drain on the economy. Sorry, old folks, and I'm getting close to that myself. As a result, populations with more older folks than younger folks tend to exhibit slower and receding economies. Some countries with robust birth rates can overcome these. Another factor to consider is the rural-urban balance of a country. Urban countries tend to concentrate in cities. Therefore, the people that live there tend to have fewer children. There's not enough space, rent is expensive, and childcare is also more expensive if it's even available. Countries with larger rural populations tend to do better on that front and have more children. Solid birth rates kind of equals insurance for the future. Poor birth rates, or things that cut into younger populations like war or disease, tend to create spirals that can be almost impossible to overcome, particularly in dense urban industrialized environments. Next, I'm going to walk through a few countries. I just picked a sample and I'm using population pyramids, a graphic depiction of the structure of a population in terms of age, from the CIA World Factbook, which has them for everybody, every country they can get one for. I'm going to start off with France, which is a country that has a relatively healthy population pyramid. Notice the bulge of folks in the 55 to 59 and 50 to 54 cohorts. These folks are approaching the end of their working lives, and I believe France's retirement age is something in the early 60s. It may move up a little bit here in coming years. These people will be needing more supports, will have less spending money. However, we can also look down beneath that and see the multiple cohorts of folks who are ages 10 to 24. These folks provide those taxpayers/consumers and spenders that France needs to move forward successfully. Therefore, we can look at this population pyramid for France and say, hey, they're in pretty good shape. Next, let's look at the United States, which we've heard a little bit about that, about birth rates and how that might be a concern and things of this nature. The United States isn't as a strong position as France, but is still in really good shape. Solid numbers in the 20 to 44 cohorts mean there will be plenty of consumers and taxpayers to sustain growth for the next few decades. Two caveats: each successive cohort behind them is having fewer children, and that is unlikely to change with economic troubles on the horizon. One potential policy solution would be some sort of childcare benefit that covered all of Americans. If you have childcare, then you're more likely to have children and be comfortable with that and be able to earn money and spend it. Furthermore, deportations of immigrants of any sort will also cause problems for the United States moving forward. Next up is Italy. Italy is in trouble. It's in a spiral that it's unlikely to emerge from. Notice how few young people are in the cohorts below the 30 to 39 age group. Declining birth rates mean that towns and cities are hollowing out. It's hard to see how Italy will be able to maintain territorial integrity or how it will be able to take care of its aging population as the 50 to 59 groups retire, which is within a decade, really. Not great. Next, we can talk about Germany. Germany's in a worse situation than Italy. Their largest population groups, from 50 to 59 and 60 to 64, are on the very precipice of retirement. In the next 4 to 5 years, their spending and the taxes they pay will drop precipitously. The age cohorts beneath them are not large enough to sustain the level of services that citizens expect in that country. This is a function of how urbanized Germany is. Most people live in fairly dense suburban and urban environments. Next up is Russia. They're in a similarly bad situation, and this is from the statistics that they provide, which are undoubtedly inaccurate. The real numbers are thought to be far worse. The Ukraine war, for instance, is killing off 15 to 34-year-olds at a staggering rate. They've lost over 1 million since the war started. And birth rates are very low for obvious reasons. When you live in a depressed economy, a war economy, having children is not something that's top of priority. Furthermore, they have that urbanization issue, particularly for the Russian ethnic group. Most Russians, those are the folks who run the show, live in dense urban environments, really 3 cities, Moscow, St. Petersburg, a few others. Russia is perhaps a decade away from demographic collapse of that dominant Russian ethnicity. There are other ethnicities within Russia. However, most of those are politically and security-wise suppressed. They may have a lot of thoughts and feelings about what a new Russia might look like. This could lead to a civil war within 10 years or so. Next up, China. This is my last example. Things have become so bad in China that official statistics on demographics are no longer collected. The folks that would have collected them don't want to tell bad news to the folks at the top. However, the handwriting's on the wall. It's estimated that China's population was miscounted in their last census by something like plus 100 million people. In 2018-19, they issued a correction to that, which was very unpopular, meaning that China's population has shrunk dramatically since 2019. Perhaps it may be less than 1 billion people now, something like 950 million. Maybe it's not that bad, but under any circumstances, they are looking at a cliff. China has spent the last 30 years densely concentrating people into cities so they can work in factories, hollowing out those rural areas and leaving themselves with really no way out of this. And we can see this looking at the data that we do have. Again, older folks don't work and don't pay taxes. That means that the revenues available to the Chinese government for all of its massive projects all of the massive spending you hear about and the military spending you hear about are drying up. This is dangerous. I hope that brings a little bit of knowledge to the study of demographics to folks who watch my channel. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please subscribe. I look forward to comments. Please keep them civil, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Thanks.